The dust kicked up around Adelaide Lawson's worn boots as she stood in the mercantile. Coins counted twice in her palm. Knowing they would barely cover the flour and beans, her 3 sons needed to get through another week. Shame about Adelaide, Mrs. Patterson's voice carried from the next aisle, sharp and deliberate. 3 boys to feed and no husband to provide. Should have remarried by now instead of clinging to that failing ranch. Adelaide's jaw tightened, but she kept counting. 2 years since cholera took Thomas. 2 years of whispers, pitying looks, and worse, the cruel suggestions that she was damaged goods, used up, too burdened for any decent man to consider. Who would want a widow with 3 hungry mouths? Mrs. Patterson continued. Those boys are running wild without a father's firm hand. The coins clinked as Adelaide set them on the counter, meeting the shopkeeper's sympathetic eyes with as much dignity as she could muster. It was June 1876 in Butte, Montana, and the silver mines brought plenty of men to town, but none who looked at her as anything but a cautionary tale. Her sons waited outside. James, barely 8 years old, tried to keep 5-year-old Samuel and 3-year-old Daniel from chasing each other into the muddy street. They were good boys, despite what the town gossip said. They worked hard on the ranch, did their chores without complaint most days, and only got into the normal trouble boys their age should. Adelaide gathered her modest purchases and pushed through the door, nearly colliding with a tall figure on the boardwalk. "Easy there, madam," a deep voice said, steady hands catching her elbow to keep both her and her parcels upright. She looked up into the most striking face she had seen in years. The man stood well over 6 feet, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of creek water in summer, somewhere between blue and green. His face was tanned from long days in the sun, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. He wore typical cowboy attire, dusty from travel, with a well-maintained revolver at his hip. "Thank you," Adelaide managed, stepping back and nearly tripping over James, who had rushed to her side. "Mama, Daniel tried to eat a bug again," James reported solemnly. The cowboy's mouth quirked and Adelaide felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I will handle it, James. Take these, please." She handed her eldest the flour sack, watching as he struggled manfully with the weight. "Let me help with that," the stranger offered, but Adelaide shook her head quickly. "We manage fine, thank you." "Did not say you did not manage, madam, just offering a hand." His voice held no judgment, just simple kindness, and something in Adelaide's chest squeezed painfully. Before she could respond, Samuel appeared, tugging on her skirt. "Mama, when can we go home?" "I am hungry. We are leaving now." Adelaide gathered Daniel into her arms, the toddler's face smudged with dirt, and nodded to the stranger. "Good day, sir." She felt his eyes follow her as she herded her boys toward their wagon, old and creaking, pulled by 2 horses that had seen better days. The ranch was an hour's ride from town, and the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly. Daniel fell asleep against her chest. Samuel drowsed between her and James, who insisted on helping drive. The ranch house came into view as the sun began its descent toward the mountains. It was a modest structure, 2 bedrooms and a main room that served as kitchen and living space combined. Thomas had built it with his own hands, planning for a larger family, more prosperity. The barn leaned slightly to the left, and the fence around the small corral needed mending in at least 6 places. After settling the boys with their meager supper, Adelaide walked out to check on their 4 remaining cattle and the old milk cow. The ranch had once run 50 head. Now they barely had enough to sustain themselves, let alone turn a profit. She leaned against the fence, letting exhaustion wash over her in the gathering twilight. "You have a nice place here." Adelaide spun, heart hammering, to find the cowboy from town sitting astride a handsome bay gelding, his posture relaxed despite her startled reaction. "You should not sneak up on people," she said sharply, fear making her voice harder than necessary. He dismounted slowly, hands visible, movements careful. "You are right, madam. My apologies. Saw you heading out of town and noticed you dropped this." He held up a small cloth bag and Adelaide's stomach dropped, her seed money for next season's kitchen garden. "Oh." She took a tentative step forward. "Thank you, that is very kind," seemed important. He handed it over and Adelaide clutched it gratefully. "It is very important." She paused, manners warring with caution. "Would you like some water for yourself and your horse?" "It is the least I can offer for your trouble. Would not say no to that." Adelaide led him to the pump, working the handle while he held his hat under the flow, then offered it to his horse. The bay drank gratefully, and Adelaide found herself studying the animal with appreciation. Good lines, well cared for, the sign of a man who valued his companions. "I am Ethan Davis," he said, resettling his hat on his head. "Came to Butte looking for ranch work." "Adelaide Lawson," she hesitated. "I am afraid I cannot offer employment. As you can see, we are barely managing ourselves." "I can see you have been managing through some hard times," Ethan said carefully. "Lost your husband 2 years ago, cholera." The words still tasted bitter. "I am sorry." And he sounded like he meant it, not the perfunctory condolences she usually received. "Those your boys I saw in town." Adelaide straightened her spine. "Yes, James, Samuel, and Daniel, they are good boys." Did not say otherwise. Ethan glanced around the property and Adelaide tried to see it through his eyes. Falling down fence, barn that needed repair, fields gone fallow except for her small vegetable patch. "How much land you have here?" 160 acres. "Homestead claim my husband proved up 6 years ago." Pride crept into her voice despite everything. "It is ours, free and clear." "That is something worth holding on to." Ethan met her eyes, and Adelaide felt that strange squeeze in her chest again. "Mrs. Lawson, I have a proposition for you." Adelaide took a step back instinctively. "I am not interested in that kind of proposition, Mr. Davis." To her surprise, he laughed, a rich, warm sound that seemed to roll across the yard. "No, madam, not that kind at all, though I can see why you might think it." His expression sobered. "I have been working ranches since I was 12 years old. Saved my wages, every penny, planning to buy my own place someday. But land prices keep rising and good property is hard to come by. What I am proposing is a business arrangement." "What kind of business arrangement?" "I have money for stock, equipment, supplies. You have land. We could make this ranch profitable again, split everything fair down the middle." He held up a hand as she started to protest. "I would sleep in the barn, keep everything proper. Hire an official as your foreman if you want it legal. But this land has good water, decent grass, and with some work, it could support a nice herd." Adelaide's mind raced. It was improper, certainly. A single woman and an unmarried man working the same property would set tongues wagging even more than they already did. But the alternative was watching her sons go hungry, losing the land Thomas died proving up, admitting defeat to every person in town who predicted her failure. "Why would you do this?" she asked bluntly. "Why not just find your own homestead claim? All the good land around here is taken." "I could go further out, but I am 32 years old, madam, and I am tired of starting from nothing in the middle of nowhere. This place has bones. Good bones. Just needs some muscle to bring it back." He paused. "And maybe I am tired of being alone working for other people's dreams." "Nice to see a family here, even if it is not mine." Something in his voice, a loneliness that matched her own, made Adelaide's defenses waver. "I need to think about it." "Fair enough." Ethan gathered his reins. "I will be at the boarding house in town for a few days. Send word if you decide you want to talk more." Adelaide watched him ride away, her mind churning with possibilities and dangers in equal measure. That night, after the boys were asleep, she sat at the rough table Thomas had built and tried to think clearly. Her supplies would last maybe 2 more months if she stretched them. After that, she would have to sell the cattle just to buy food, which would eliminate any chance of rebuilding the herd. By winter, they would have nothing. She could try to sell the land, but property with a leaning barn and broken fences would not bring much, certainly not enough to start over elsewhere. Or she could take a chance on a stranger with kind eyes and a business proposition. The next morning, Adelaide left the boys with their nearest neighbor, Mrs. Chen, a widow herself who had managed to hold onto her small farm through sheer stubbornness and a talent for growing vegetables. Mrs. Chen asked no questions, just shooed the boys toward her chicken coop to collect eggs and told Adelaide to do what needed doing. The boarding house sat at the far end of Butts Main Street, a respectable establishment run by a retired schoolteacher. Adelaide found Ethan in the dining room, finishing breakfast with several other men. He stood immediately when he saw her, excusing himself and leading her to the front porch where they could speak privately. "I have conditions," Adelaide said without preamble. "I would expect nothing less. You sleep in the barn, no exceptions. You take your meals with us, but the house is mine and my son's private space unless invited otherwise. Any profit we make gets split exactly in half after expenses. I make all final decisions about the boys' welfare and upbringing. And if this arrangement does not work, for any reason, you leave with whatever stock you paid for originally, and we part ways clean." Ethan considered her words carefully. "All of that sounds more than fair. I would add one thing. I am not just hired help, Mrs. Lawson. If I am investing my money and sweat into this ranch, I need a real say in how it is run. We make decisions together about stock, about land use, about major purchases. You have final say on your boys, but the ranch itself, we are partners, equal partners." It was a risk, giving up that control. But he was right. If he was investing everything he had, he deserved a voice. "Equal partners," Adelaide agreed, holding out her hand. Ethan's palm was calloused and warm as he shook her hand firmly, sealing their bargain. "When do we start?" "Today, if you are ready." "Madam, I have been ready for this my whole life." Within a week, Adelaide understood exactly how much she had been struggling alone. Ethan worked from before dawn until after dusk, repairing the barn with lumber he bought from the mill, mending fence, clearing the overgrown fields. He was patient with the boys, who viewed him with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion, neither praising them excessively nor dismissing their attempts to help. "Your mama says you are in charge of the chickens," Ethan said to James one evening as Adelaide prepared supper. "That is an important job." "We only have 6 chickens," James replied, a defensive note in his voice. 6 chickens that need feeding and watering every day, eggs collected, coop kept clean. That is real ranch work, James. Nothing small about it." James stood a little straighter, and Adelaide felt a lump form in her throat. True to his word, Ethan slept in the barn, even after he reinforced the structure and made it weatherproof. He took his meals with them, sitting at their table with his hat off and his manners impeccable, telling stories of his years working cattle drives and various ranches across Montana and Wyoming. "Why did you never start your own place before now?" Adelaide asked one evening after the boys had gone to bed and she was finishing the dishes. Ethan dried the plate she handed him carefully. "Sent money home for a long time. My mother and sisters needed it more than I did. By the time they were settled, I was nearly 30 with nothing to show for 15 years of work but a good horse and the clothes on my back. He set the plate in the cupboard. Could have been bitter about it, I suppose, but family is family. Are they still in Montana, Wyoming? Mother passed 3 years ago. My sisters are married now with homes of their own. They are doing fine. He smiled, but Adelaide caught the loneliness behind it. Write them sometimes, visit when I can, but they have their own lives. It must be hard being alone. Sometimes, Ethan admitted. But working here, hearing your boys laugh, sitting down to a family meal, that helps. Their eyes met across the small kitchen, and Adelaide felt something shift between them, something warm and dangerous and entirely inappropriate given their business arrangement. She looked away first, handing him another plate with hands that trembled slightly. The next day, Ethan rode to town and returned with 10 head of cattle, young stock with good bloodlines. Adelaide nearly wept when she saw them, sturdy and healthy, the foundation of a real herd. She tried to thank him, but her voice kept breaking. Partners, Ethan reminded her gently. This is as much your investment as mine. June melted into July and the ranch began to transform. The fields, cleared and irrigated, would be ready for hay next season. The barn stood straight and true. The fence enclosed a proper corral. The cattle grazed contentedly on the good grass. Adelaide's garden flourished, providing fresh vegetables for their table and enough extra to sell in town. It was after one of these town trips that Adelaide encountered Mrs. Patterson again, this time at the general store. Adelaide Lawson, I hear you have taken in a man, Mrs. Patterson said loudly, ensuring everyone in the store could hear. I hired a foreman, Mrs. Patterson. It is a business arrangement. A business arrangement where a strange man lives on your property and eats at your table, with your innocent boys right there. Mrs. Patterson's voice dripped false concern. People are talking, Adelaide, saying it is not proper. People have been talking about me since Thomas died, Adelaide replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. They talked when I tried to manage alone, said I could not handle the ranch. Now they talk because I found help. I cannot control what people say, Mrs. Patterson, and I am done trying. She purchased her supplies and left with her head high, but her hands shook as she drove the wagon home. She hated being the subject of gossip, hated knowing her sons might hear the whispers about their mother. Ethan was working with a new horse in the corral when she returned, a young gelding he was training to work cattle. He took one look at her face and handed the lead rope to James, who had been watching from the fence rail. Keep him walking in circles, nice and calm, Ethan instructed. I will be back in a minute. He followed Adelaide into the house. What happened? The usual, town gossip, Mrs. Patterson making sure everyone knows how improper our arrangement is. Adelaide set down her parcels more forcefully than necessary. Sometimes I think I should just sell this place and move somewhere nobody knows us. You do not mean that, do I not? Adelaide whirled to face him. My sons are going to grow up hearing their mother called terrible names. James already knows something is wrong. I can see it in his face when we go to town. How long before the other children start repeating what their parents say? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. There is one way to stop the gossip entirely. What? Send you away? Prove them right that I cannot manage alone. Marry me. Adelaide stared at him. What? Marry me? Ethan repeated, his voice calm and steady. A proper marriage, legal and binding. That gives me the right to be here to help raise your boys to work this ranch. People could not say a word about it then. That is insane. We barely know each other. We have been working side by side for 6 weeks. I know you take your coffee black, that you sing while you cook, that you are fiercely protective of your sons and this land. I know you are strong enough to handle anything life throws at you and kind enough to give a stranger a chance." He paused. "I know you are the first woman in a long time who has made me think about something beyond the next ranch, the next job." Adelaide's heart hammered against her ribs. "This is about the gossip, about convenience." "Maybe it started that way, but Mrs. Lawson, Adelaide, I am asking you to consider it. A real marriage, a real partnership. I have come to care for you and your boys. I think maybe you have come to care for me too, at least a little." She had. That was the terrifying part. She had caught herself watching for Ethan in the mornings, had felt her pulse quicken when he smiled at her across the table, had imagined more than once what it might be like to have his strong arms around her. But this was too fast, too sudden. "I cannot give you an answer right now," she said finally. "I am not asking for one right now. Think about it. We can take our time, do this right if you decide yes." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it is worth, I am not proposing out of pity or duty. I am asking because I want this. Want you, want those boys, want this life we are building together." He left her standing in the kitchen, her mind reeling. That night, Adelaide lay awake long after the boys' breathing had evened into sleep. Marriage. A real marriage, not just a business arrangement. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She had loved Thomas deeply, had mourned him honestly. Could she open her heart to someone else? Did she even know how any more? But there was more to consider than just her own feelings. James needed a father figure, someone to teach him how to be a man. Samuel and Daniel needed stability, security. They all needed this ranch to succeed. And if she was honest with herself, she needed help, needed partnership, needed someone to share the burden and the joy of each day. She thought of Ethan's gentleness with her sons, his tireless work ethic, the way he made her laugh despite herself, the way her breath caught when their hands accidentally touched, the way he looked at her sometimes, like she was something precious and strong all at once. By the time the sun rose, Adelaide had made her decision. She found Ethan in the barn, already at work feeding the cattle. "I have thought about your proposal." He turned, his expression carefully neutral, but she could see tension in his shoulders. "And I have conditions." Again. Adelaide tried to smile. "You are going to learn that I always have conditions. I would not expect anything else. If we do this, it will be a real marriage, like you said, but we take it slow. I have not been with anyone except Thomas, and that still feels complicated. I need time to adjust to the idea of you as my husband and not just my business partner. I can give you all the time you need. And you have to ask James for permission. He is the man of the family right now in his mind. He needs to feel like he has a say in this." Ethan's expression softened. "I can do that. And if at any point you realize you made a mistake, that you do not really want a ready-made family, you tell me honestly. I will not trap you in something you do not want." Adelaide. Ethan crossed the distance between them, stopping just close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "I would not have asked if I did not want this. I am 32 years old. I have had plenty of time to figure out what I am looking for. A good woman, a family, a place to call home. That is you, that is this. I am not going to change my mind." Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes. "Then yes, I will marry you." Ethan's face split into a grin that transformed him from handsome to absolutely devastating. "Yes, yes." And then, because she was terrified and excited and needed to know, Adelaide stood on her toes and kissed him. It was brief, tentative, their first kiss. But Ethan's hand came up to cradle her cheek with such gentleness that Adelaide felt something inside her chest crack open, letting in light for the first time in 2 years. "I am going to make you happy," Ethan promised against her lips. "You and those boys, I swear it. I believe you." That afternoon, Ethan took James aside while Adelaide was hanging laundry and Samuel and Daniel were supposedly napping. "James, I need to talk to you about something important. Man to man." James straightened up, trying to look older than his 8 years. "Okay. I have asked your mama to marry me, but before she gives me a final answer, I wanted to talk to you. You are the oldest, and I know you have been taking care of your mama and your brothers. That is a big responsibility." "Mama says I am the man of the house since Papa died," James said quietly. "Your papa would be very proud of how you have stepped up. But James, you are 8 years old. You should not have to carry all that weight. I am not trying to replace your father. Nobody could do that. But I would like to help. I would like to be part of this family if you will have me." James studied him with serious eyes. "Will you be mean to Mama? Never. Will you teach me things, like how to break horses and fix fences properly? Every single thing I know. And you will not leave like Papa did." James's voice cracked slightly. Ethan's throat tightened. "Your papa did not want to leave you, James. He got sick. But I promise you I will be here as long as your mama and you boys want me." James considered this gravely. "Okay, you can marry Mama, but you have to be nice to Samuel and Daniel too, not just me. I promise to be good to all of you." "That includes you, James." James nodded once, decisive, then surprised Ethan by stepping forward and hugging him awkwardly. Ethan returned the embrace carefully, feeling the boy's thin shoulders under his hands, the trust implicit in the gesture. "Thank you," Ethan said softly. "That means more than you know." They were married a week later in the small church at the edge of Butte, with Mrs. Chen and the pastor as witnesses, and 3 scrubbed boys standing beside them. Adelaide wore her best dress, faded blue calico that had seen better days, and carried wildflowers James had picked that morning. Ethan wore new clothes, purchased specially for the occasion, his dark hair neatly combed, his expression solemn as he made his vows. "I, Ethan Davis, take you, Adelaide Lawson, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to stand beside you, to work with you, to honor you and care for your sons as my own. In prosperity and hardship, in joy and sorrow, for all the days of my life." Adelaide's voice shook only slightly as she repeated her own vows, slipping a simple gold band onto Ethan's finger, one she had purchased with egg money saved carefully over the past months. "You may kiss your bride," the pastor said. Ethan cupped Adelaide's face in both hands and kissed her sweetly, gently, aware of 3 pairs of young eyes watching them. When they pulled apart, Adelaide was smiling, and something in Ethan's chest settled into place, like coming home after a long journey. The wedding breakfast was held at Mrs. Chen's house, a modest celebration with good food and genuine warmth. Even a few people from town showed up, the ones who had remained kind through Adelaide's struggles, bringing small gifts and sincere congratulations. Mrs. Patterson was conspicuously absent, but Adelaide found she did not care. She had made her choice, and for the first time in 2 years, she felt like the ground beneath her feet was solid. That night, after the boys were settled and the house was quiet, Adelaide sat on the edge of the bed in her room, now their room, her hands twisted in her lap. Ethan appeared in the doorway, having taken his time putting away the horses and banking the fire, giving her space. "I can sleep in the barn tonight," he offered quietly, "if you need more time." Adelaide shook her head. "You are my husband now. You should not have to sleep in the barn." She paused, "But I meant what I said. I need to take this slow." "Then slow is what we will do." Ethan sat beside her on the bed, careful to leave space between them. "Adelaide, I am not in a hurry. We have the rest of our lives to figure this out." She leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, and Ethan wrapped an arm around her waist, holding her gently. They sat like that for a long while, comfortable in the silence, before finally lying down side by side, still mostly clothed, just getting used to sharing space. "Good night, husband," Adelaide whispered into the darkness. "Good night, wife," Ethan replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. The next weeks fell into a new rhythm. Ethan moved his few belongings from the barn to the house, claiming space in Adelaide's room with the careful consideration of someone who understood he was grafting himself onto an existing life. He was patient with her shyness, content to hold her at night and wake beside her in the morning, letting intimacy build gradually. The boys adapted with surprising ease. Samuel started following Ethan everywhere, a small shadow mimicking his new stepfather's walk and trying to help with every task. Daniel, young enough to barely remember Thomas, began calling Ethan Papa within a month, which made Adelaide cry the first time she heard it. James remained more reserved, testing boundaries, waiting to see if Ethan would keep his promises. It was James who created the first real crisis in August. Adelaide found him behind the barn, tears streaming down his face, clutching a small wooden horse Thomas had carved for him. "James, sweetheart, what is wrong?" "I forgot what Papa looked like," James sobbed. "I tried to remember, but I could not. Does that mean I do not love him anymore?" Adelaide gathered her son against her chest, her own tears falling. "Oh, James, no, sweetheart, you will always love your Papa, always, and he will always love you wherever he is. Forgetting what he looked like does not change that. But I should remember. I am the oldest. I should remember for Samuel and Daniel." Ethan's voice came from behind them, gentle. "James, remembering what someone looked like and loving them are not the same thing. You carry your Papa in other ways. In how you take care of your brothers, in how you work hard without complaining, in the good man you are becoming. That is how you honor him, not by holding onto a face that gets harder to see as time passes." James turned in Adelaide's arms. "Do you really think so?" "I know so." Ethan crouched down to James's level. "My father died when I was about your age. I cannot tell you what he looked like anymore either, but I know he loved horses, and so do I. I know he believed in keeping your word, and I try to do that every day. I know he would be proud of the man I have become, just like your Papa would be proud of you." James launched himself at Ethan, who caught him easily, holding the boy while he cried out his grief and confusion and fear. Adelaide watched them, her heart aching and healing all at once. That night, after the boys were asleep, Ethan found Adelaide on the porch staring at the stars. "Thank you," she said softly, "for what you said to James. I meant every word." Ethan sat beside her, their shoulders touching. "He is a good boy, Adelaide, they all are. You have done an incredible job with them. I was so afraid I was failing them, that they needed more than I could give. You gave them everything. Love, stability, a home. Everything else is just details." He paused. "But I am glad I get to help with the details now." Adelaide turned to look at him, this man who had walked into her life just months ago and changed everything. His profile was strong against the starlight, and she felt a surge of affection so powerful it nearly knocked the breath from her lungs. "Ethan, I think I am falling in love with you." He turned to meet her gaze, his eyes soft. "I know I am falling in love with you. Have been, probably since the day you nearly knocked me over outside the mercantile with flour in your hair and fire in your eyes." "I did not have flour in my hair." "You absolutely did, right here." He touched a spot above her temple, then let his hand slide down to cup her cheek. "Adelaide, may I kiss you? Really kiss you?" In answer, Adelaide closed the distance between them. This kiss was different from their first tentative brush of lips, different from the chaste kiss at their wedding. This was heat and need and promise, Ethan's hands in her hair, her fingers clutching his shirt, both of them breathing hard when they finally pulled apart. Inside? Ethan asked, his voice rough. Inside, Adelaide agreed. Later, wrapped in her husband's arms, her skin still humming from his touch, Adelaide felt the last piece of her broken heart slot back into place. It was not the same as before. Thomas would always be part of her, her first love, the father of her children. But there was room for this too, for Ethan and the future they were building together. "Are you all right?" Ethan murmured against her hair. "Better than all right, I am happy." She felt him smile. "Me too. So damned happy I could burst with it." By September, the ranch was thriving in ways Adelaide had not thought possible. Their cattle herd had grown with several new calves. The hay fields were ready for harvest. The vegetable garden had provided so much surplus that Adelaide was selling produce in town twice a week, building a reputation for quality that brought regular customers. And the gossip had stopped. Oh, there were still whispers. There would always be whispers. But married to Ethan, with her ranch prospering and her sons obviously thriving, Adelaide found the whispers had lost their power to hurt her. One afternoon, she encountered Mrs. Patterson in the mercantile again. "Well, Adelaide, I see you landed on your feet after all, Mrs. Patterson said, her tone suggesting she had expected otherwise. "I did, thank you, Mrs. Patterson. My husband and I are quite happy." "Husband, yes. That certainly worked out conveniently, did it not? A stranger showing up just when you needed one." Adelaide felt Ethan's presence behind her before she saw him, his hand coming to rest gently on the small of her back. "I am the lucky one, Mrs. Patterson," Ethan said pleasantly. "A beautiful, hard-working wife, 3 fine boys, and a ranch with real potential. Some men search their whole lives for what I found in Butte, Montana." Mrs. Patterson pursed her lips, clearly struggling for a response. "Besides," Ethan continued, pulling Adelaide a little closer, "I always wanted a full house. What is better than a good hand in life?" Adelaide felt warmth spread through her chest. A full house. Not a burden. Not mouths to feed or obligations to shoulder. A full house like the poker hand, something valuable and worth holding on to. "Indeed," Mrs. Patterson finally managed and moved away with her nose in the air. "I always wanted a full house," Adelaide repeated quietly, laughter in her voice. "It is true. I did. Do." Ethan dropped a kiss on top of her head, casual and affectionate in a way that still made her heart flutter. "Though I am hoping we might add to that house eventually if you are willing." Adelaide had been thinking about this herself, imagining a baby with Ethan's eyes and her determination. "I am willing." His grin could have lit the whole store. Yeah, but let us get through winter first. Make sure we can handle what we have before adding more." "Practical as always, Mrs. Davis." "One of us has to be, Mr. Davis." They finished their shopping hand in hand, Adelaide's heart lighter than it had been in years. October brought the first real cold, frost on the ground in the mornings and the need for heavier coats. The boys were growing like weeds, James shooting up so fast Adelaide had to let down the hems of all his pants. They worked together on the hay harvest, even little Daniel helping stack the smaller bales, everyone pitching in to prepare for winter. Ethan was teaching James to ride properly, and the boy had taken to it with natural grace, sitting tall in the saddle and beaming with pride when he successfully cut a calf from the small herd without help. "You are a natural," Ethan told him. "Another year or two, you will be as good as any ranch hand twice your age." James glowed under the praise, and Adelaide felt grateful again for this man who understood how to build up her son's confidence without spoiling him. One evening in late October, Adelaide realized her monthly courses were late. She said nothing at first, not wanting to get Ethan's hopes up if she was wrong. But another week passed, and certain smells started making her stomach turn, and she recognized the tender sensitivity in her breasts. She was expecting. Adelaide broke the news to Ethan one night after the boys were asleep, simply taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "Really?" His voice cracked with emotion. "I think so. It is early yet, but I am fairly certain." Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she squeaked in protest. "Sorry, sorry." He loosened his grip but did not let go. "Adelaide, I am going to be a father. You already are a father, to 3 boys who love you. I know I love them too, but this is our baby. We made this together." His wonder was contagious, and Adelaide found herself laughing and crying at the same time. "We did. Are you happy?" "Happy, Adelaide, I am beyond happy. I do not even have words." He kissed her soundly. "How are you feeling? Are you sick? Do you need anything? Should you be resting more?" "I am fine. A little queasy in the mornings, but that is normal, and I am certainly not an invalid. I have done this 3 times before, remember, still. You will let me help more around the house. And no lifting anything heavy." "Ethan." "I mean it, Adelaide. You are carrying precious cargo now." She softened, touching his cheek. "All right, I will be careful, but you have to promise not to hover too much. I still have months to go." They told the boys a week later, after Adelaide had seen the doctor in town and confirmed everything was progressing normally. "We are going to have a baby," Adelaide announced at dinner, watching their faces carefully. Samuel looked confused. "A baby from where?" "From Mama," James said with the world-weary tone of an 8-year-old who knew things. "That is how it works." "Will it be a boy or a girl?" Daniel asked. "We will not know until the baby arrives," Ethan said. "But either way, you 3 are going to be big brothers. That is an important job." "More important than chickens?" James asked. "Much more important than chickens." James considered this seriously. "Okay, I can do that." Winter came hard and fast that year, snow piling up by early November and temperatures dropping well below freezing most nights. But the ranch was prepared. They had plenty of hay for the cattle. The barn was weatherproof, and the house was snug with a well-stocked root cellar and meat shed. Adelaide's pregnancy progressed without complication, though she was definitely showing by December, her dresses straining at the seams despite her attempts to let them out. Ethan was attentive without being overbearing, making sure she had the best cuts of meat at dinner, rubbing her feet in the evenings when they swelled, taking over the heavier household chores without making her feel useless. "I am not made of glass," she protested one evening when he tried to stop her from carrying a pot of stew to the table. "I know that. But humor me. I have never had a pregnant wife before, and I intend to take care of you whether you think you need it or not. You are impossible. You love me anyway." She did. Desperately, completely, in ways she had not thought possible after Thomas. It was different from her first marriage. That love had been built slowly over years of shared struggle and young dreams. This love was born of mutual respect, practical partnership, and a connection that ran soul deep. Both were real. Both mattered. Christmas was a modest celebration, but full of joy. Ethan had carved each boy a wooden animal, spending hours in the barn creating perfect little horses and cows. Adelaide had sewn new shirts for everyone, working by lamplight after the household was asleep. They had a small tree decorated with popcorn strings and paper chains the boys had made, and a goose Mrs. Chen had traded for a bushel of potatoes. "Next year our baby will be here for Christmas," Samuel said, staring at Adelaide's rounded belly with fascination. "That is right," Adelaide confirmed. "We will have a full house indeed." Ethan caught her eye across the table and smiled, that private smile that was just for her, and Adelaide felt a rush of contentment so profound it brought tears to her eyes. Pregnancy was making her overly emotional, but she did not care. The new year of 1877 arrived with a blizzard that kept them snowed in for 3 days. The boys treated it like an adventure, building elaborate forts out of furniture cushions in the main room while Ethan kept the fire going and Adelaide knitted tiny baby clothes, her hands moving with practiced ease. "You want a boy or a girl?" James asked Ethan during one of these snow days. "I just want a healthy baby and your mama to come through the birth safely," Ethan said honestly. "Everything else is extra." "But if you could pick," Ethan considered, "maybe a girl. You boys need someone to balance you out." "Girls are weird," Samuel declared. "Your mama is a girl and she is not weird. Mama is different. She is mama." Adelaide laughed from her rocking chair. "I will take that as a compliment." By March, Adelaide was huge, uncomfortable, and ready to meet this baby already. The doctor had confirmed everything was fine. The baby was positioned correctly, and it should be any day now. Mrs. Chen had agreed to come stay and help with the delivery, having served as midwife for half the women in the territory over the years. Adelaide's labor started on a Tuesday morning, early contractions that she recognized immediately. She got the boys their breakfast, sent them out with Ethan to do morning chores, and calmly packed them a bag to stay with Mrs. Chen for a day or two. Adelaide. Ethan appeared in the doorway, taking in her flushed face and the way she was breathing through a contraction. "Is it time?" "It is time. Can you take the boys to Mrs. Chen and bring her back here, of course? Are you all right? Should I stay?" "I am fine. First babies take forever." "Go quickly before the boys figure out something is happening and get scared." Ethan kissed her forehead. "I love you. You are the strongest woman I know. You can do this." "I have done it 3 times before. This one will be no different," but it was different. This labor was harder, longer, more painful than Adelaide remembered. By evening she was exhausted, drenched in sweat, crying out with each contraction. Mrs. Chen remained calm and encouraging, but Adelaide could see concern creeping into the older woman's eyes. "The baby is stuck, Mrs. Chen said quietly during a brief reprieve. "Shoulder is caught. I need to try to turn it." "Will that hurt her?" Ethan asked from the doorway, where he had been hovering despite Mrs. Chen's attempts to banish him. "It will hurt the baby less than staying stuck will." "Adelaide, I need you to trust me." Adelaide nodded, too tired to speak. The next contraction hit, and Mrs. Chen did something that made Adelaide scream, but then suddenly there was pressure and release and the unmistakable wail of a newborn. "A boy, Mrs. Chen announced, laying the baby on Adelaide's chest. "A beautiful, healthy boy." Adelaide looked down at her son, red-faced and squalling, absolutely perfect. Dark hair plastered to his tiny skull, eyes squeezed shut, fists waving angrily at the injustice of being born. "Ethan," she whispered. He was beside her in an instant, one hand on her shoulder, the other reaching tentatively to touch the baby's head. "He is perfect. Adelaide, you did so well. He is perfect. We need a name." They had discussed names endlessly over the past months, finally agreeing on Thomas if the baby was a boy, to honor Adelaide's first husband, and Grace if it was a girl. But looking at this tiny face, Adelaide felt that did not fit quite right. "What about Edward?" she suggested. Edward Thomas Davis, new beginnings but honoring the past too. Ethan's eyes were suspiciously bright. "Edward, I like that. Edward Thomas Davis." He leaned down to kiss her temple. "Thank you for him, for all of this, for letting me be part of your life." "Thank you for showing up when I needed you most," Adelaide whispered back. The boys met their baby brother the next day, tumbling into the bedroom with barely contained energy before remembering they were supposed to be quiet around the new baby. "He is so small," James marveled, peering at Edward's sleeping face. "You were that small once," Adelaide told him. "Can I hold him?" Adelaide showed James how to support the baby's head, watching as her eldest cradled his new brother with unexpected gentleness. Samuel and Daniel crowded close, fascinated by the tiny fingers and toes. "He is ours," Daniel asked. "He is ours," Ethan confirmed. "Part of our family, just like all of you." Over the next weeks, life adjusted to accommodate the new addition. Edward was a relatively easy baby, sleeping in long stretches at night and eating well. Adelaide recovered from the birth quickly, though Ethan insisted on doing most of the heavy work for the first month. The ranch continued to prosper. Their cattle herd now numbered over 30 head, with more calves expected in the spring. The hay harvest from the previous fall had been sufficient to get them through winter with extra to sell. Ethan had started talking about buying the adjacent property, another 160 acres that would give them room to expand significantly. "We could run 100 head easily with that much land," he said one evening, studying a rough map he had drawn. "Maybe more. That is a lot of cattle. That is a lot of profit. Enough to make sure all our boys can go to school properly, maybe even college someday if they want. Our boys." Ethan never differentiated between the three he had inherited and the one they had created together. To him, they were all his sons, and he treated them accordingly. By summer, life had settled into a comfortable routine. James was helping with the real ranch work now, riding out with Ethan to check cattle and mend fence. Samuel had taken over the vegetable garden, showing an unexpected green thumb. Daniel followed his older brothers everywhere, and Edward was growing chubby and happy in Adelaide's care. One afternoon in July, almost exactly a year after Ethan had first ridden onto their property, Adelaide stood on the porch watching her family. Ethan was teaching James to rope a fence post, both of them laughing when the loop went wild. Samuel was weeding the garden with Daniel's dubious help. Edward dozed in a basket at her feet, making little snuffling sounds in his sleep. This was everything she had thought she lost when Thomas died. Family, security, love, laughter, hope for the future. She had been so certain her life was over at 30 years old that she would spend the rest of her days alone, struggling, becoming bitter and hard. Instead, she had found Ethan, or he had found her. Either way, they had found each other at exactly the right moment, two people who needed what the other had to offer. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan's voice interrupted her reverie. He had walked up to the porch without her noticing, leaving James to practice his roping. "How happy I am. How lucky we are. I am the lucky one, remember, got a full house and then some." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. "Though I was thinking we have 4 boys now, might need to try for that girl to balance things out." Adelaide laughed. "Let me recover from Edward first. Give me at least a year." "A year I can do, but after that, Mrs. Davis, I intend to fill this house with as many children as you will give me." "Is that so, Mr. Davis?" "That is so. Love you too much not to want more little copies running around." Adelaide turned in his arms, looping her hands behind his neck. "I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes." "Nothing to be scared of. I am not going anywhere. You are stuck with me for the next 50 or 60 years at least. Promises, promises." He kissed her then, slow and sweet, the kind of kiss that still made her toes curl even after months of marriage. From the yard, James made exaggerated gagging noises, but Adelaide just smiled against Ethan's lips. This was her life now. This was her family. Hard won, unexpected, and more precious than anything she could have imagined. The ranch, the man, the boys, the future stretching out before them full of possibility and promise. The gossips in town still talked sometimes, she knew. Whispered about the widow who had landed on her feet, the convenient cowboy who had shown up just in time. But Adelaide did not care anymore. Let them talk. She knew the truth. She was loved. Her children were thriving. Her ranch was prospering. And the man who had walked into her life when she needed him most had turned out to be everything she never knew she was looking for. Autumn arrived with its usual burst of color, the aspens turning gold against the evergreens on the mountainsides. Adelaide turned 31 in September, celebrating with a cake James helped bake that came out lopsided but delicious. Edward started sitting up on his own, reaching for everything in sight with chubby hands and a determined expression that reminded Adelaide strongly of his father. The ranch work continued, endless and satisfying. They bought the adjacent property in October, just as Ethan had planned, giving them 320 acres total. It was a big operation now, requiring real management and long days, but they worked together seamlessly, partners in every sense of the word. By their first wedding anniversary in November, Adelaide was expecting again. She told Ethan on the actual date, handing him a small package at dinner. "What is this?" He turned the cloth-wrapped bundle over in his hands. "Open it." Inside was a tiny knitted cap, impossibly small in soft yellow yarn. Ethan stared at it for a long moment before his head snapped up. "Really? Again? Really? I know we said we would wait longer, but apparently our timing is not that good." Ethan whooped and picked her up, spinning her around the kitchen while the boys laughed at their antics. Edward banged on his high chair tray, not understanding but wanting to join in anyway. "Another baby," Ethan said, setting Adelaide down but keeping his arms around her. "Adelaide, I am the happiest man alive. Just remember that when I am huge and cranky next summer," she teased. "I will remind you that you said that. This pregnancy was easier than Edward's had been." Adelaide was more experienced, her body knew what to do, and she was not trying to do everything alone. Ethan took over more of the household work without being asked, and James surprised her by stepping up to help with his younger brothers, taking Samuel and Daniel on adventures to give her rest. Winter passed peacefully. Spring brought new calves, melting snow, and the return of green to the valley. Adelaide's belly swelled as the weather warmed, and by June she was moving slowly, counting down the days until she could meet this new baby. "What do you think it will be?" Samuel asked one evening, resting his hand on her stomach to feel the baby kick. "No idea." "What do you hope for?" "A sister might be nice. We have a lot of brothers already." Adelaide hoped for a girl too, though she would be happy with any healthy baby. But it would be nice to have a daughter, someone to teach different things, to braid hair and share woman things with someday. Labor started on a warm night in July, the kind of evening where the air hung heavy and still. Mrs. Chen arrived quickly, and this time the birth was fast and uncomplicated. Within a few hours, Adelaide held a squalling baby girl, red-faced and furious, absolutely perfect. "A girl," Mrs. Chen announced with satisfaction. "What are you calling her?" Adelaide looked at Ethan, who was staring at their daughter with naked wonder. "Grace. We picked that before." "Grace Adelaide Davis," Ethan said. "If that is all right, I want her to have your name too." Adelaide felt tears slip down her cheeks. Grace Adelaide Davis. Perfect. The boys were entranced by their baby sister. Even James, who had been trying very hard to act too grown-up for such things, could not hide his fascination. Edward, not quite a year old, seemed deeply confused about the new baby, patting her head with clumsy gentleness. "We have 5 now," Daniel announced proudly. 5 kids in our family." "That is a lot of kids," Samuel agreed. "That is a perfect amount," Ethan corrected. "Though your mama and I might not be done yet." Adelaide laughed tiredly. "Let me recover from this one first." But she was not actually opposed to more children. Their house was full of love and laughter. Their ranch could support a larger family, and she loved watching Ethan with their children, biological and inherited alike. By 1879, the ranch was one of the most successful in the region. They ran over 100 head of cattle, employed 2 ranch hands during busy seasons, and had a reputation for fair dealing and quality stock. Adelaide's kitchen garden had expanded into a full market garden, with Samuel managing most of it himself at age 8. James, now 11, could do the work of a grown man on horseback and was teaching his younger brothers. Daniel, at 6, was still finding his place but showed promise with the animals. Edward toddled after everyone, determined to help despite being barely 2. Grace was a happy baby who smiled at everything and everyone. Adelaide stood in her kitchen, preparing dinner for her large family, and marveled at how much her life had changed. 5 years ago she had been alone, struggling, mocked by the town gossips as a failed widow with too many children, and not enough sense to catch a new husband. Now she had a home that rang with laughter, children who were healthy and happy, and a husband who loved her more every year. The ranch supported them comfortably with money to spare. Her sons were receiving good educations, both from formal schooling and from the practical knowledge Ethan imparted daily. Grace would grow up knowing she could do anything her brothers did, watching her mother run a successful ranch operation as an equal partner. "Thinking deep thoughts?" Ethan asked, coming up behind her to wrap his arms around her waist. "Thinking about how far we have come. How different everything is from that day in the mercantile when you caught me before I dropped my flour." "You had flour in your hair," Ethan reminded her, as he always did. "I did not." She turned in his arms. "But I am glad you were there that day, glad you followed me home. Glad you asked me to take a chance on you. Glad you said yes. Glad you keep saying yes." He kissed her softly. "Love you, Adelaide Davis. Love you, Ethan Davis." From the yard came the sound of children playing, James and Samuel engaged in some elaborate game while Daniel cheered them on. Through the window, Adelaide could see them, could see the life they had built together from nothing but hope and hard work and love. The gossips had been wrong. She had not needed to be ashamed of being a widow with 3 sons. She had not been damaged goods or too much trouble or any of the other cruel things they had whispered. She had been a strong woman going through a hard time, waiting for the right partner to walk into her life, and he had. A cowboy looking for a full house had found a widow who needed help, and together they had built something beautiful. Not just a successful ranch, though they had that. Not just a large family, though they had that too. But a real partnership, a true love story, the kind that lasted. That night, after the children were all in bed and the house was quiet, Adelaide and Ethan sat on their porch watching the stars. It was their routine now, these quiet moments together at the end of long days, time to reconnect and just be together without the demands of children and livestock and endless work. "You ever regret it?" Adelaide asked suddenly. "Taking on a ready-made family? You could have had an easier life, found a young woman without baggage, started fresh." Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. "No, not once, not even for a second. Adelaide, you and those boys, you gave my life meaning. Before I met you, I was just drifting, working other people's dreams, saving money for someday. But someday never came. Then I saw you in that mercantile, struggling but strong, and I thought, that is a woman worth knowing. That is a life worth being part of. You make it sound so simple." "It was simple. I needed you. You needed me. We fit together like puzzle pieces, made a picture neither of us could have created alone." He pulled her closer. "The boys are not baggage, Adelaide. They are your sons, they are my sons now too, and I would not trade them for anything. Same with Edward and Grace. Every child in this house is a blessing, Every day with you is a gift." Adelaide rested her head on his shoulder, contentment settling over her like a warm blanket. "I was so scared when you first proposed. Scared of loving again, scared of trusting someone new with my heart and my children, scared of being hurt again. And now I cannot imagine life without you. You are part of everything we are, everything we have built. You made us a whole family again. We made us a whole family. You, me, the boys, all of us together." Ethan kissed the top of her head. "And we are not done yet. I fully intend to fill this house with more children, more laughter, more love. Going to need to add on to the house soon at this rate." Adelaide laughed. "You are probably right. 5 children in a 2-bedroom house is getting tight. We will build more rooms, make space for however many children we are blessed with. I always wanted a big family, Adelaide. Always wanted this, even when I did not know what this was. Now I have it and I am never letting go." "Good," Adelaide said softly, "because I am never letting you go either." They sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of the Montana night surrounding them, cattle lowing softly in the distance, the wind rustling through the grass, the creek that ran through their property bubbling over rocks. This was their land, their life, their future. The years continued to pass in a blur of hard work and happiness. In 1880, Adelaide gave birth to another son, Charles Ethan Davis, who came into the world screaming and did not seem to stop for the first 6 months. In 1882, another daughter arrived, Margaret Rose Davis, calm and peaceful from the moment of her birth. In 1884, twins surprised everyone, 2 boys they named Henry and William, identical in appearance and united in mischief. The house had been expanded twice by then, adding 3 more bedrooms and a proper parlor. The ranch employed 6 full-time ranch hands and owned over 400 cattle. They had built a reputation as one of the finest cattle operations in Montana, and buyers came from as far as Denver to purchase their stock. James, at 17, managed much of the day-to-day operations alongside Ethan, a full partner in the business. He was engaged to a nice girl from town, planning to build a house on the property and raise his own family there someday. Samuel, at 14, was considering studying agriculture at the new land-grant college, wanting to learn the latest farming techniques to implement on the ranch. Daniel, at 11, had discovered a talent for breeding horses and was building up a small string of quality mounts. Edward, now 7, was the peacemaker among his siblings, always ready to mediate disputes or comfort someone who was hurt. Grace, at 6, was as tough as any of her brothers and twice as stubborn, determined to prove she could do anything they could do. Charles, at 4, followed Edward everywhere. Margaret, at 2, was doted on by everyone as the baby, until the twins arrived. Then Margaret learned what it was like to be an older sister, and Henry and William brought a whole new level of chaos to the household. Adelaide, at 38, sometimes felt ancient. Her hair had threads of silver now, and her body bore the marks of bearing 9 children. But when she looked in the mirror, she also saw laugh lines from years of joy, strong arms from years of work, and eyes that sparkled with contentment. Ethan, at 40, had silver in his hair too, and the deep tan of a man who spent his life outdoors. He was still strong as an ox, could still work circles around men half his age, and still looked at Adelaide like she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. 9 children, Adelaide said one evening, nursing the twins while Grace played at her feet and the older children did homework at the table. 9. We are insane. We are blessed, Ethan corrected, bouncing a fussy Charles on his knee. Every single one of them is a blessing. A loud, expensive, exhausting blessing. The best kind. He grinned at her over Charles's head. Besides, we have the room and the means. Why not share our good fortune? Because I am 38 years old and my body might mutiny if I have any more babies. Fair enough. 9 is a good number. A full house and then some. Adelaide laughed. More than some. We could field our own baseball team. Not a bad idea. Davis family baseball, I like it. The children grew and the ranch grew with them. By 1890, James had married and had 2 children of his own, living in the house he built on the eastern section of the property. Samuel had gone to college and come back with new ideas about crop rotation and soil management that significantly increased their hay yields. Daniel's horse breeding program was turning a serious profit. Edward, at 13, had started talking about becoming a doctor, fascinated by the way bodies worked. Grace, at 12, declared she was going to run the ranch when she grew up, and nobody doubted her. Charles, at 10, was the family artist, always sketching the animals and landscapes. Margaret, at 8, had her mother's head for numbers and kept detailed records of every penny spent and earned. Henry and William, at 6, were still partners in crime but showed signs of developing their own interests. Adelaide was 44, Ethan was 46, and they had been married for 14 years. The ranch spanned over 1,000 acres now, one of the largest operations in Montana. But more than the land, more than the cattle, more than the money in the bank, they had family. A large, loud, chaotic, beautiful family that had grown from one widow, 3 sons, and a cowboy who said he needed a full house. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Ethan surprised Adelaide with a trip, just the 2 of them, leaving the children in James's capable care for 3 days. They rode up into the mountains, to a small cabin Ethan had built in secret, a place where they could be alone and remember what it was like to be just a couple instead of parents to a small army. "This is beautiful," Adelaide breathed, standing on the cabin porch looking out over the valley below. Their ranch was visible in the distance, a prosperous spread that had grown beyond anything she had imagined possible. "Not as beautiful as you," Ethan said, pulling her into his arms. "You are biased. Absolutely. Have been for 15 years now." He tilted her face up to his. "Adelaide Davis, you are the love of my life. The best decision I ever made was riding after you that day to return your seed money. The best decision I ever made was saying yes when you proposed, even though you thought I was crazy, especially because you were crazy. Nobody else would have taken on a widow with 3 sons and a failing ranch. Nobody else would have loved them like they were your own. Nobody else would have built this life with me." Adelaide touched his face, tracing the lines there. "Everyone earned through hard work and honest living. I love Thomas. I will always love him. He gave me my first 3 sons and taught me what partnership meant. But Ethan, you gave me back my life. You gave me hope and joy and a future I thought was lost forever." Ethan's eyes were bright with emotion. "We gave each other a future." "That is what partnership means, Adelaide. Not one person saving the other, but both people choosing to build something together." They spent 3 days in that mountain cabin, talking and laughing and making love like they had all the time in the world. They planned for the future, discussed which children might want their own sections of the ranch someday, talked about maybe traveling once the youngest were grown. They remembered the early days, the struggles and triumphs, the way they had learned to work together and love together. On the 3rd day, riding back down to the ranch, Adelaide felt at peace in a way she rarely did with 9 children demanding her attention. This was her life. This wonderful, chaotic, full life, and she would not change a single thing about it. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. The children grew into adults, some staying on the ranch, some venturing out to find their own paths. James took over more of the ranch operations as Ethan began to slow down slightly in his 50s. Samuel became a renowned agricultural expert, consulting with ranches across the territory. Daniel's horses were sought after throughout Montana and Wyoming. Edward did become a doctor, setting up practice in Butte, and serving the community with the same kindness his parents had shown him. Grace married a rancher from the next county, and shocked everyone by running their operation while her husband handled the books, proving that traditional roles did not have to be followed. Charles sold his paintings for good money, capturing the Western landscape in ways that made people stop and stare. Margaret married a banker, and between them, they managed the finances for half the businesses in town. Henry became a lawyer. William became a teacher, both using their identical appearance to their advantage more than once. Adelaide's first 3 sons, James, Samuel, and Daniel, all named their own first sons Thomas, honoring the father they remembered less clearly with each passing year but still loved. Ethan attended each of those naming ceremonies with pride, never showing a hint of jealousy that these boys wanted to remember their biological father. He understood that families could be complicated, that love did not have to be exclusive, that honoring the past did not diminish the present. By 1900, Adelaide and Ethan were grandparents many times over, their family tree sprawling and complicated. They still lived on the ranch, though in a smaller house now that the children were grown and gone. James and his wife lived in the main house with their 6 children, running the day-to-day operations. But Ethan and Adelaide were still involved, still riding out to check cattle, still making decisions about the future of the ranch. On a warm summer evening in June 1901, Adelaide sat on her porch, now 75 years old, watching Ethan play with some of their grandchildren in the yard. He was 77, moving slower than he used to, his hair completely white now, but still strong, still laughing, still the man she had fallen in love with 25 years earlier. 25 years. A quarter century since that day in the mercantile, when she had nearly knocked him over with flour in her hair. She smiled at the memory, at how terrified and desperate she had been, at how he had looked at her with those kind eyes and seen not a burden but a future. "What are you thinking about, Grandma?" Grace asked, settling into the chair beside her. Grace was 30 now, pregnant with her 4th child, still running her ranch with the same determination Adelaide had shown decades earlier. Thinking about how much changes in 25 years. How much stays the same too. You and Grandpa certainly stayed the same, still as in love as ever. Adelaide watched Ethan swing one of the grandchildren in a circle, his laughter carrying across the yard. Love is not staying the same, honey. It is growing together, changing together, adapting to whatever life throws at you. Your grandfather and I have been through so much together. Good times and hard times, births and deaths, successes and failures. But we went through all of it together as partners. That is what made it work. I hope I have what you and Grandpa have, that kind of partnership. You do, Adelaide assured her. I see it in the way you and your husband work together. That is what I tried to teach all of you. Find someone who is your equal partner, who respects you and works with you. Everything else will follow. Grace squeezed her hand. Thank you, Grandma, for being an example of that, for showing us what a strong woman looks like, for never giving up even when everyone in town was saying you should. Oh, honey, I wanted to give up so many times. I was so tired, so scared, so alone. But I had you children, well, your uncles back then, and I could not give up on them. They needed me. Then your grandfather came along and helped carry the load. That made all the difference. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the family play. Adelaide's heart was full, overflowing with gratitude for this life she had been blessed with. She thought about that day in the mercantile, Mrs. Patterson's cruel words about who would want a widow with 3 sons. She wished she could go back and tell her younger self that someone would want her. Someone wonderful, kind, hardworking, and loving. Someone who would see her sons not as burdens but as blessings. Someone who would build an empire with her, create a dynasty, fill her life with more love than she had dreamed possible. That evening, after the grandchildren had been collected by their various parents and the house was quiet, Adelaide and Ethan sat on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. "I am tired," Ethan admitted, a rare confession. He had been slowing down more this past year, though he tried to hide it. "Then rest, my love. We have earned our rest." "I do not want to rest. I want to keep living, keep experiencing things with you. There is never enough time." Adelaide took his hand, feeling the calluses that had never faded, the strength that remained despite his age. "We have had 25 years, Ethan. 25 wonderful years, and we have built something that will last long after we are gone. 9 children, all grown and successful. Dozens of grandchildren who will tell our story to their grandchildren. A ranch that will support this family for generations. We did that together." "Not enough," Ethan said stubbornly. "I want another 25 years. Want to see those grandbabies grow up. Want to hold great-grandbabies. Want to ride these fields with you until we are both too old to sit a horse. Then we will do that. As long as we can, we will keep living, keep loving, keep working. But Ethan, when the time comes, we will have no regrets. We have lived a full life, more than full." "A full house," Ethan agreed, the phrase they had used so many times over the years. "The fullest house there ever was." They sat together as the stars came out, Adelaide's head on Ethan's shoulder, his arm around her waist. 2 people who had found each other at exactly the right time, who had built something beautiful from struggle and hope and love. 2 people who had proven that second chances were real, that families could be blended and still be whole, that love could grow and deepen with each passing year. The gossips had been wrong. The ones who mocked Adelaide for being a widow with 3 sons, who said no decent man would take on such a burden, who predicted failure and shame. They had been spectacularly wrong. Because a cowboy had come along who needed a full house, and he had found a widow who needed a partner. Together, they had created not just a successful ranch, but a legacy of love, of family, of partnership that would echo through generations. And that was worth more than all the cattle in Montana, all the land in the territory, all the gold in the mines. That was real wealth. That was real success. That was a life well lived. Adelaide closed her eyes, content in the knowledge that whatever came next, they had done well. They had loved well. They had built something that would last. And if she had it all to do over again, she would not change a single thing. Not the struggles, not the pain, not the fear. Because all of it led to this moment, to this man, to this family, to this life. A full house indeed. The fullest, most beautiful house there ever was.